Real questions, real answers for real life. Come on in and pull up a chair. You're at 1850 Main Street with Michael DelGiorno and David Zanotti.
If journalism died back in 2016, does that mean that now it's just a walking corpse shambling around and trying to eat anyone that gets in its way?
It had to happen, right? It had to happen. Have you seen the hit pieces on RFK Jr.?
Yeah, I have. And, from the two great sources, first from the Associated Press and followed up by the Washington Post. They do what we say they do. They communicate one to another with all of us over listening. But I think we're the only two that are looking in broad daylight.
The AP story's old. I have to admit, I missed it.
Late 2020, October 2023. Yeah. That's not that long ago. Old.
No, and of course, that was the one everybody knew was coming. RFK Jr. is an anti-vax barbarian. He's responsible for the death of children all over the world. And he's as criminal as Donald Trump. And blah, blah, blah. We all knew that was coming. All right. What did you think of the other one? The one that just popped up from WAPO on the birds.
What, the egg stealer? Yeah.
It's like an Alfred Hitchcock thriller. Are you kidding me?
I think you nailed it. I mean, the first one, there was a wave. And again, this was the Associated Press, and I think it was actually my mother's birthday, October 23rd, which is why I remember. October of 2023, just before the holidays. And this is just when he was still technically a Democrat and was going to be on the Democratic primary process. And the big push to paint him as an anti-vaxxer. Well, that push didn't stick. In fact, if you give him any time, and we saw it with Bill Maher, that was a fascinating interview with Bill Maher. And he explains it. If you give him time, put him on every morning show, ABC, NBC, CBS, put him on every talking head primetime, CNN, MSNBC, Fox, and ask him these anti-vax questions, and he will explain himself and explain that attack away. Now they're moving on to something I think a little darker and a little deeper in the Washington Post. Now they want to make sure you know about his heroin addiction. You know about his work with, David, help me, I forgot the egg stealer. What was his name? I can't believe I forgot his name now.
Yeah, I don't know that his name's even important.
Well, no, it isn't, but I was trying to, but so now we're going to go back to, literally, I'm not exaggerating. I was a freshman at Louisiana State University. They're digging up all the way back to 1983 when RFK Jr. was 29 and doing work for Riverkeepers and his partner, the Falcon Andor egg stealer. I mean, you can't make this up.
This goes beyond skull and bones and all that other stuff. The Washington Post, and tell me how great that hit piece was, though. I mean, this was like at any moment you thought Deep Throat was going to come out of the parking garage and bring us back to the Watergate. I mean, they unfolded it over like, I don't know how many.
Maybe Jack Bauer was over at the port trying to get the eggs. No, I did a little Dave. I've been David Zanotti influenced. May I brag?
Go fire away.
I'm going to be you to you. Did you bother to look up Peter Jameson, who wrote the hit piece?
I was hoping you would catch the clue.
Okay, so first thing you're going to notice is Yale University. You're going to go, wait a minute, this guy's Yale University. This might be a legit. He is an English major from Yale University, but if you trace his work, he just got a Pulitzer with a group of writers on the covering of the Great Insurrection and the Capitol Invasion. But I mean, this guy is not a doctor. He's not an attorney. He's not even a Falcon egg expert, but he's writing the hit piece. And I mean, if we went paragraph by paragraph and we read some of these paragraphs, this guy's talking like he's some kind of medical doctor, vaccination expert, let alone attorney, let alone CSI, egg SI, private investigator. That part made me laugh out loud.
This is Peter Jameson, right?
Mm-hmm.
How about this headline? How RFK Jr. hiring a bird smuggler threw his environmental group into turmoil.
Isn't it beautiful?
And then you've got a picture of what must be a 28-year-old or a 30-year-old RFK Jr.
Oh, he looks tiny.
Okay, they're going back 40 years. They're bringing up the fact that he was arrested for heroin possession. He was arrested and was basically pitched into rehab because he had a very serious drug problem, and he admits that out loud, openly.
Kennedy's detractors often divide his career into two phases. the laudable period, workhorse of the environmental movement, and a swerve into conspiracy theorist and worldview that defines his independent bid for the White House. How can we never break Joe Biden into when the body once had cognitive ability, once plagiarized? I mean, the double standard. I mean, where are you going with this? But is this all they could dig up? We had to go back to 1983?
Listen, I really think everybody ought to read the story because it's intriguing. It reads like a Hitchcock thriller. There's just nothing to it in the end. The question is, what was it? Cockatoos? Were those the birds from Australia?
Actually, I was going to say they were working with the falcon. I forget what they called the falcon people, like falconers or whatever.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, but it was cockatoo eggs that his partner apparently stole.
Well, this was some guy that he knew.
Robert Boyle, that was his name.
Yeah, and the story is that Kennedy was working for an environmental group, and there was obviously an internal power struggle from the old guy who was the founder, and Kennedy coming in with a name and with money and with the potential to build. And as often happens in nonprofit organizations, there's a contention, and then the board has to vote. Well, Kennedy wanted to hire this old friend he knew from years ago who had a run in jail, and he went to jail because he was smuggling cockatoo eggs out of Australia
into New York.
Into New York and selling the bird eggs because people wanted these exotic birds, and it get into all this environmental laws and so on and so forth. Well, the guy ended up going to jail for what he did. And Kennedy, when the guy got out, Kennedy said, well, you could come to work here for us. I don't know how that all came down. The bottom line was it's all cast as Kennedy giving a guy a second chance. So the board had to approve. The founder said, don't do it. Kennedy said, let's do it. The board voted with Kennedy, and now those people ended up being lifelong bitter enemies and blah, blah, blah. Okay, whatever. 40 years ago, we're down to cockatoo eggs. Okay. How hard do you think the Washington Post had to search to be able to get this story?
Yeah, no, the story is a joke, but let's piece it with the stories from late in the week. So it was funny as I was reading this, and in full disclosure, you had sent me the story, probably assuming I'm the RFK freak of us. And so I started reading, and I immediately thought of all of the stories last week from the Washington Post and the Associated Press concerning what we all know is brewing, and that is the electric car failure, potential bailout. I'm reading this wondering, is this just like October of 2023's hit piece in the Associated Press about the, paint him as an anti-vaxxer and people's children are dead and they're putting pictures on books and, insensitive and all that. And I'm thinking, even when that didn't make sense, this makes great sense. They're already making a play in early March concerning Michigan coming in November and the problem Robert Kennedy poses for them. That's what this hit piece is about. They won't cover anything consistently, but what they are doing hit pieces on are very revealing. They know they got a weak candidate. They know they're going to get Trump. They know he's not distracted. They know he's not going broke. They know he's not having second thoughts. He's having a cakewalk of a primary, so you really can't distract him too much with court, and nothing's sticking. So you got your guy, but he's not wounded, and you got this other guy you kicked out of the cockatoo nest, and he's a big problem come Michigan. That's what this hit piece screamed at me, unless they're really suddenly into cockatoo justice.
What
it could be.
Is there is no question whatsoever. We're talking about the big hitters in the mainstream press are exerting all of their powers to control the outcome of this election. Now, I don't have a dog in the fight, so to speak. I'm not here advocating for one candidate or the other. My beef is with the pseudo. Well, let's put it this way. You talked about it in 2016. The greatest tragedy of what happened in that year was the death of journalism. That's what died in 2016 and COVID. Now, we're basically talking about these institutions are basically walking zombies. Well, this is the zombie press. Yeah. And they are just literally trying to glom onto anything that they're threatened by and find a way to kill it. Now, you got to read the story. It's worth reading. Let the record show. We are not telling people not read the Washington Post. We're saying you got to read this article because it's a hoot. And you realize how hard they have to work to try to do something to upend this guy's credibility, they must obviously be afraid of him.
All right. And he's, for Peter Jameson, and believe me, nobody's making light of a Yale degree, but it's a degree in English, not in environmentalism, not in vaccination, not in medical. He's not a medical doctor. He's not an attorney, but he is an attacker of insurrection. He goes around and keeps pasting insurrection on MAGA, which is the new deplorable, and it's like, all right, we need a hit piece on RFK. Oh, go get Jameson. He's been giving Trump, you know what. We can turn him loose on RFK and get him to write up something about heroin in 1983. You can't make it up. You can't.
But wait, there's more. The next thing is you've been calling day after day on your morning show. When's the State of the Union address coming? Why don't we hear about it? Where's the schedule? And I mean, right? If anyone knew what this, well, let's talk about that.
I was just gonna say, because it's got some cockatoo eggs of its own.
When you subscribe to 1850 Main Street, you're the first to find out what's happening next with new guests, publications, and events. And when you spread the word about 1850 Main Street, you're helping others find real answers to the real questions facing America right now. To learn more, visit 1850mainstreet.com. And please, tell a friend.
So, as a member of the media, you have to know when the State of the Union address is coming, right? I mean,
there's got a lot of people got to travel, reporters, different. Yeah,
sometimes it's January. It's almost always no later than February. And this year, what in the world? The delay. And now we find out that just last week, everybody said, okay, next Thursday, that's when it is. Now, I don't know whether you blame the House Speaker for sending the invitation or if he wasn't supposed to send the invitation until the president said, please send me the invitation. All I know is it's really late, right?
Yeah.
And is it because Biden was hoping to get an agreement in Israel and a ceasefire that he could bring to the table? Were they trying to avoid having to talk about government shutdowns? I mean, what's the politics of all that?
Yeah, and normally you could just, ask in a news conference a question like that. Of course, you don't get straight answers anymore. And one of the things that's been greatly broken since COVID is trust, period. So you would speculate that they were hoping to get a ceasefire in Israel. Don't forget, I's the biggest problem. Maybe they were waiting. I don't think so. On some Supreme Court decisions. We've got one coming 10 a.m. Monday morning in terms of being on the ballot in Colorado, but nowhere near the immunity one that they'd be waiting for. So I'd still suspect ceasefire in Israel. You might say better. Were they waiting for some better inflation numbers? That didn't pan out for them. Inflation actually ticked up. If it was cognitive issues, I don't think time is on your side. If it was wanting to get by Michigan and Super Tuesday, but I'd have to go back and research previous election years. I don't ever recall a State of the Union this late. I just don't. I'm sorry.
So the word just comes out.
We're into March Madness now. I don't ever remember. Yeah.
The word just comes out. It's going to be next Thursday. But wait, here's an interesting breaking story. On March 2nd, the Washington Post comes up with this article: "Give him hell, Joe, and keep the State of the Union shorter." And it starts off by saying, previewing Thursday's State of the Union address. Wait a second. Did you get a preview copy?
I have not seen, and I do this for a living, and I try to, I think it's actually kind of fun on your morning show, which is technically, I guess, my morning show, but I love to show people what the headlines are from across the spectrum. Here's what Waypost saying, Washington Post. Here's what AP is saying. Here's what the New York Times is saying. Here's what ABC, NBC, CBS is saying. Here's what Fox is saying. Here's what CNN is saying. I love doing that. And so I go to every source. I have not seen a single story on this. So this was the first I heard of the State of the Union. And where do I hear it? In the editorial board opinion of the Washington Post.
Yeah.
Where democracy dies in darkness. Rooting on old Joe to give him hell and keep it short. They're coaching him. No one would tell us why there wasn't one, why it's being delayed, what we're waiting for. And when they finally make the announcement, they don't make the announcement. And they tell him to give him hell. And, oh, by the way, let me coach you a little bit. Keep it short because,
Here's what you got to say. Here's how to say it best. Okay, so this is the full editorial board of the Washington Post.
Apparently there's staff at the White House now.
Telling an incumbent president of the United States how to deliver the State of the Union address. And somewhere they want us to believe that there's a scotch, a minutia, a molecule, an atom of objectivity left in their approach to American politics.
I think if you're Joe Biden, too, this could be the biggest insult. And I don't know that history is going to remember it quite like this, but they go through everything about Joe Biden and all his greatest accomplishments. But and never mind, junk fees and drug prices. No. His legacy will be defeating President Donald Trump in 2020. And if he's going to do it again in 2024, he better not squander his biggest televised audience of the year. Well, that's what I kept saying on my show. You talk about you always bring up the plane. He's got the plane. He's the incumbent. He got the biggest plane.
He's got the biggest plane.
That's the biggest theater in American politics, the State of the Union. It's the ultimate pomp and circumstance. So why would you squander that? But the notion that they're so obsessed with Donald Trump, that's the measure of this man's, and I don't have to tell you, since, 50 years? This is it. This is what it all boils down to. We hit him in a basement and beat Trump in 2020, and he better not squander this pomp and circumstance and televised ability to beat him in 2024. That's it.
Here's a quote. Mr. Biden should take a page from President Harry S. Truman's playbook. As the 1948 election season began, Truman appeared as vulnerable as Mr. Biden does now, but he won a full term by using the do-nothing Congress as a foil and rallying the country to meet the geopolitical challenges of the post-World War II era. Twice within our generation, world wars have taught us that we cannot isolate ourselves from the rest of the world, Truman said in his 1948 State of the Union. All right. This is the Washington Post writing the State of the Union address.
They're telling
the president what you need to say.
I thought you were going to pick this paragraph. This is literally coaching. If you did this to me before a show, I'd say, David, go get a radio show. I mean, you're telling me what to think and what to say. What are you?
And I would say to you, what do you mean? Go get one.
Well, I know you have 200 stations, but you know what I'm saying? Follow the wording in this. Conventional wisdom holds that politicians should emphasize, in other words, White House, conventional wisdom is you should emphasize the issues to which you have an advantage. Don't bring up Israel. Don't bring up inflation. Don't bring up the border. No, emphasize issues that you have an advantage, like abortion. De-emphasize those in which you're vulnerable. Don't bring up the border. Don't bring up that you're old. Have these people read polls lately? I mean, what are you going to bring up? His Corvette?
Mr. Biden needs to keep the State of the Union shorter than his previous 3 addresses to Congress. Truman spoke for 41 minutes in 1948. Mr. Biden spoke for 73 minutes last year. Quick. Can you remember anything he said? No fair Googling.
You know who gave the shortest?
Who?
Well, we go back to our founding fathers. They didn't do these. They'd
send them in, right?
They send a letter. This will shock people. Nixon and Reagan gave the 2 shortest.
Oh, for those days again.
Oh,
yeah. And speaking of which, I have zero toleration for this whole circus. I will read the speech. I will not watch the speech. I will read the text.
Well, it takes forever when you're watching.
Yeah.
I don't have to tell you.
Tolerate the nonsense of this whole circus. It's a disgrace.
This will not shock anyone. I'll never forget. He spoke at the DNC convention before running for president while just a governor. And he came on the Johnny Carson show, and it was famous for how long he spoke. And Johnny asked him a question and then put one of those hourglasses with sand and goes, go. Because he knew Bill Clinton and Donald Trump. But Bill Clinton gave the longest State of the Union speech, second only to Donald Trump.
I'm thinking it might have been the day that he came out with the health security card and showed it to the world. In any case, this is an all-new low in regards to journalistic objectivity, and it even goes past. This is an op-ed piece, I get, or this is an editorial board piece, I get it. This is the board speaking as the institution.
But why would you
Washington
print it?
Post.
Why would you print it for everyone to see?
Why would you do that? why would you basically say, this is what we expect you to do, and this is what you have to do, and this is what we want you to do,
And
this is what you should do?
And if they'll tell the president what he should do to look good, how to maximize the things that are helping you, minimize the things that are hurting you, if that's what they'll tell a president to do to win an election he probably shouldn't, that they're meddling into, what do you think they do every day in their newspaper?
How shameless this is. And let's think, if you were to, again, and I know that there's no way of doing comparative outrage on hypocrisy. That's not what I'm trying to say. But if you could just imagine that if the Heritage Foundation got caught dictating the president's speech and calling out loud, as here's what he's going to say, here's what he should say, here's what he has to say, so forth, the whole unibrow media would turn back around and say he is a puppet of this institution.
Well, you know this has been going on for a long time. What hasn't been going on for a long time is you literally print it.
Yeah.
You print
Say it out loud.
your coaching notes.
Yeah.
You're talking to the West Wing. Make sure this old idiot does this and doesn't do that, and keep it short. Now go give him hell. I mean,
Poe will defend himself by saying advanced copies of the President's State of the Union address have been given out over the years to major media sources. You're just jealous because you didn't get one. No, no, that's really not what we're talking about here. This is as far as it's ever gone over the boundary of any form of objectivity. The fourth estate is now trying to be the first estate.
I think it boils down to this, and we can't get any deeper than this. And I've been saying this for a long time, because usually you know what the date of the State of the Union address is very quickly after the new year, because it's usually the third or fourth week of January. Rarely does it fall into February. I think the time I went was late January. So why didn't we have one? What's the excuse? Were we at war? Was it delayed because of this, because of that? Were we waiting on maybe this happening, that happened? Nobody said a word. And when we finally, I bet you some people will be hearing this will be the first time you've heard it. I've yet to hear it in a news story or see. I wonder if we'll wake up on Monday morning and that's all it'll be in the news. State of the Union Thursday, State of the Union Thursday. I still can't find anything on my wire service.
So are you going to watch it? Are you actually going to watch the thing?
This is
my
excuse
because you started like.
I was going to say this is my first, State of the Union in 22 years where I'm not a morning man. So I'm a morning man now. I don't know. I may just read it and get some highlights in the morning. I usually love the State of the Union. The one I got to go to was Barack Obama. And, for me, I just kept thinking John F. Kennedy once stood there. Ronald Reagan once stood there. It's still one of my favorite political nights. It hasn't completely been soured yet for me, but
Abbott and Costello, here we come.
I don't think I can do Joe Biden. No, not a long Joe Biden speech. Not when I got to get up at 3:00.
All that's left for WAPO to do now is to tell the Democrats in the House what they're supposed to wear to the event. That's what we're down to.
What I think they ought to do is just go grab Peter Jameson, some cockatoo eggs, and have him deliver the speech.
The conversations are just getting started. To get connected, check out 1850mainstreet.com. We don't data mine anyone or sell your information. Subscribe today so you don't miss a single conversation. We'll see you next time here at 1850 Main Street.